Hello. Today we are going to be talking all about the glycemic index. So the glycemic index is a ranking system for all foods that do contain carbohydrates. So that's everything other than straight protein and fiber. And the reason being is because fiber and protein does not impact blood sugar at all. So what we are looking at is the foods that do impact blood sugar. So when you eat a higher glycemic index food, it is digested very quickly. When our blood sugar goes up, when it's digested quickly, insulin is let out of the pancreas in order to bring blood sugar back down to baseline. So this was initially created for diabetics in order for them to keep their blood sugar regulated. So with high glycemic foods, we eat the food, it digested quickly, spikes blood sugar quickly, and then we have a quick drop. So when we have a quick rise and fall, our insulin does not have time to keep up. So then when we eat again, and it might be another high glycemic food, we have that quick surge again of blood sugar and then drop. So you feel the sugar buzz and then you feel the crash. So whether it's a sweet food or it's a food that's starchy, that's still high glycemic, we're still gonna have that blood sugar up and down. And our insulin levels always stay slightly elevated. Now, the problem with this is that we become insulin resistant over time, meaning that we need more and more insulin for our body to do the same thing. It's just like an alcoholic that builds up a tolerance. They need more and more alcohol in order to do the same job. So if your pancreas is constantly shooting out more and more insulin, that is a problem for more than one reason. And Type 2 diabetes being the number one, but also the fact that we cannot burn fat efficiently when we're in the presence of insulin. So the key with everything that we do is to keep blood sugar pretty regulated throughout the day. That's not only going to help with weight loss and body transformation and type 2 diabetes prevention, but it's also going to help with our energy levels. And so many people are always talking about how you need, X, Y, and Z in order to function in the morning or to get through your workout. And really, if you're eating the proper foods, your blood sugar should not be out of whack. Therefore, you should have sustainable energy throughout the day. It might dip slightly, it might go up slightly, but for the most part, you should feel the same consistent energy all throughout the day. So this is going to help in more ways than one. So what we are trying to do is sticking with low glycemic foods the majority of the time. Nothing is all or nothing here. So majority of the time, 90% of the time if you can, at least 80% of the time, low glycemic foods. And when you are going to have those higher glycemic foods, you need to understand how to prep your body in doing so, and that's completely fine when it does happen, but it's doing it in the right way. So for instance, if you're at a restaurant and you sit down and you know that they're gonna bring you that bread and butter and you love it and you don't have anything in your system, it's been a couple hours since you've had food, you're starving, you so badly want to eat, they bring the bread out, and all you wanna do is just eat that bread. Or same thing with the tortilla chips at a Mexican restaurant, but this is high glycemic. So you're gonna eat it, it's gonna spike our blood sugar right off the bat. That's what we want to prevent. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna ask the server to hold off, wait until you bring my food out. I'm gonna order something with some veggies, some lean protein, and then when you start eating the lower glycemic foods, the protein, the fiber, our body is working so hard at breaking down that protein and fiber. And remember, it doesn't spike blood sugar at all. So our body's digesting those foods that when you put in the higher glycemic food, the bread, the chips, whatever it is, the baked potato that you want, it is not going to impact blood sugar nearly the same as if you just ate fewer calories eating just the starch by itself. So that is why I am a huge advocate of what we are choosing to eat and the quality of the food and how it impacts blood sugar, because it's not all about calories in versus calories out. If we're eating minimal calories and we're restricting ourselves, but our blood sugar is doing this and our insulin levels stay elevated, and the pancreas has to keep shooting out more and more insulin in order to do the same job, that is going to bring on a world of problems. People that are skinny get diabetes all the time. Skinny people are skinny fat. So it's not all about cutting calories, and that's why it's crucial to understand the glycemic index and how you can use it as a really helpful tool. So with our lower glycemic foods, of course, pretty much all your vegetables are going to be good. Proteins, you're all safe. But I do give you a full list that has everything ranked according to the glycemic index as a gauge. But of course, I've not included every single food on that list. So today I want to go through some of the foods that I have here and walk you through my thought process when I am choosing brands, when I am creating meals, and whether they're healthy or they're not, how to make them healthier options. Okay, so I do want to mention that in addition to the glycemic index, we also want to keep in mind our artificial sweetener intake, which is something that we really want to try to reduce, if not eliminate. So our sucralose, our aspartame, and erythritol can be one of those that some people can do, others it creates a lot of gas and bloating. So at the end of the day, anything artificial is really difficult for our body to digest. It's a foreign thing to the body, just the same as animal products can be. So if you are consuming animal products, really make sure you are getting organic sources if at all possible, and know where your animals are coming from if you can. And that's where the problem lies more so, but that's a completely different story, different day. Okay, so artificial sweetener, reduce. Animal products, try to get quality, and try to incorporate more plants than animal. And even if it's just little by little, it's very important that we are focusing on increasing our plant-based protein intake and decreasing animal product intake if at all possible. And also gluten. Gluten fits directly into the glycemic index in terms of the fact that gluten is a protein. So when we are going gluten-free with a particular brand, they are removing protein. So as I told you before, protein aids in helping lower the glycemic index of a meal because it doesn't spike blood sugar. So if we're removing protein from an item, we are increasing the glycemic index of the food, meaning it's going to spike our blood sugar a little bit quicker than if it did have the gluten in it. Now, does that mean to eat the gluten? It's all a balancing act here. If you have celiac or something that really is, it's very crucial that you completely remove gluten, by all means do so. But very few people are celiac, and most people are just slightly intolerant. The intolerance comes from overconsumption day in and day out of gluten. It's not just when you're having it intermittently throughout the week. Most people can do that and be fine. But if you are consuming it little by little throughout the day, every single day, that's when the problem is created. So be aware of gluten within brands. And I want to show you, first, let's talk about pasta. Pasta is one of those things that's about medium glycemic, and it's not as bad as potatoes, bread, things like that, because there is a decent amount of protein. So I'm going to look at this whole wheat with gluten pasta, and we have 41 carbs, we have 5 grams of fiber. So with any label that we're looking at, you always look at the carbohydrates first. This is to understand the glycemic index. So if you have 41 carbs, 5 grams of fiber, we have 36 grams of net impact carbs, because remember, fiber does not impact blood sugar. So that is going to be removed from the equation altogether. So you're always looking at net impact carbs. Don't worry about the overall carbs, always net when we're talking anything macro, nutrient-wise, anything glycemic index-wise. So 36 grams of carbs, and then the sugar doesn't matter so much if we're not talking a sugary food. So we're talking a starch here. So 36 grams of carbs, and then we have 7 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat. So that is very similar to what I see here, although there's more protein here. There is the same amount of fiber, but lower carbs. So here's 35 carbs, 5 grams of fiber. So we only have 30 net impact carbs, same serving size. So we have fewer carbs here, and protein is at 11 grams. So we have 5 additional grams of protein here than here. Actually 4, sorry, I can do math. But we have more protein here, less carbs here. So this is obviously the better option, and we don't have gluten. So that's why chickpea and lentil pasta, black bean pasta, soybean pasta, those are all great options, low glycemic, they're protein packed, they're packed with fiber, and all in all, it does have some carbs, but this is a great option. Now, with that being said, I personally would still add some additional protein to your meal if you are using this. And if you want to go with this option, that's fine. Add additional protein and fiber. So ideally, you would chop up some chicken or some tofu or tempeh if you're plant-based, and you would do some kind of a sauce with some nutritional yeast and some broccoli. You can get your fiber, you get a little bit of extra protein from the nutritional yeast, and if you've not tried that, it is a must try for sure. And you can also get the additional protein from your meat. So same thing goes with this, but you don't have to add as much protein to it because we have more protein here from the jump than here, okay? So it's all a balancing act. But anytime you can add protein and fiber to something, especially when you're in question of it, do so. And I know it's very difficult to understand that increasing your calories is a healthier way of eating, but in terms of blood sugar regulation, it is crucial. And blood sugar, again, is crucial to weight loss because if we have that insulin all the time, we're not going to be able to burn fat efficiently. So remember, even through the digestive process itself, we are spiking insulin somewhat. Even when you eat meat by itself, even though it doesn't spike blood sugar, it still has a small insulin spike as well. So again, that's a different video for a different day, and that's not to confuse you, but that's just to let you understand that intermittent fasting is another amazing tool, and that's precisely why we do it, is because we're minimizing the opportunities that we have for spiking insulin. Because if you're grazing all throughout the day, even though it's a slight increase, if you're staying low glycemic, it's still spiking insulin to a certain degree every time we eat. So again, intermittent fasting paired with glycemic index and low glycemic focused is a deadly combination. Okay, so with soybeans, roasted edamame is a great low glycemic choice. So we're gonna look at the carbs, 9 carbs, 5 grams of fiber, 4 net impact carbs here. And you have 12 grams of protein per serving. That is incredible. And then you look at the fat. Fat doesn't factor in, it factors in, but it's not up there with the carbs and the protein. That's what you want to look at. After the carbs, you remove the fiber, and then you look at the protein. Because we always want to have that protein around the carbs or under, okay? Or I'm sorry, erase that. We want to have the protein either above, so higher protein than the carbs, or somewhere in the vicinity. And I know people have asked me this before, what is the exact number that I can have the difference being? So if I have, and let's go back here. So I told you 30 grams of net impact carbs, 11 grams of protein. So in my mind, what I typically do is, okay, what's the deficit here? So we have 20 grams of carbs that are kind of left over, if you will. So in my opinion, I always try to keep it 20 grams or less with the deficit, if at all possible. Okay, this is not going to be every meal. Some meals, especially dinner and lunch, are going to be a little bit higher carb. And again, it depends on your goals and all of that. So some people can get away with a little bit more carbs than others. But ideally, 20 grams of leftover carbs is the most I want you doing if your goal is weight loss, okay? The littler, the smaller that number is, the deficit between the net impact carbs and the protein, the better, okay? So another thing that does aid in slightly lowering the overall glycemic index is healthy fat. Okay, so with this product, 8 grams of fat, only 1 gram of saturated fat. So that is so helpful as well. It's not so helpful with these because we only have 1 gram of fat. But if my carbs were a lot higher here, that would actually aid in lowering the glycemic index of this overall, but it's already very low glycemic. So this is a great option to add to a salad. And if you're, not wanting to have meat, there you go. You add 1 to 2 servings of the soybeans on there. You add a little nutritional yeast. You add some of your favorite salad dressing, and you have a decent amount of protein and fiber, okay? And black beans, okay? So lentils, beans, they are a good source of plant-based protein. However, if this is your main protein, I will say that that's a slippery slope because you could add a lot of carbs with that protein. So you want to make sure that in addition to whatever you are having with these beans, you do try to add more protein. So we're going to look at the total carbs, 20. The dietary fiber, 5. So we have 15 grams of net impact carbs, 7 grams of protein. So it is a medium-ish glycemic index choice, okay? So it's a great plant-based choice, but that's why if you are vegan, it is very, very, very crucial that you are aware of the carbs that you're consuming to get your protein because it can get up there very quickly. So what I do is if I'm making a Mexican dish, I would always add either tofu or tempeh. If you're someone that is very soy sensitive or you're just afraid of soy for some reason, and again, soy is okay in moderation and if it is organic, non-GMO. That would be a completely different story if we're eating genetically modified soy, which is terrible, but 99% of the time when you find soy, it's going to be organic if you're buying the whole block of it, okay? It's the things that are in cereals and things like that that might be genetically modified, a lot of protein bars. So be aware when you're consuming soy that it is non-GMO. That is crucial to remember. Now, with this, I would either add the soy in there, or what I would do is I would add nutritional yeast, a couple tablespoons of that. That adds straight protein. And then, and of course, if you're not plant-based, you can add some chicken, you can add whatever you want. But if you are not wanting that, especially if you're plant-based, then what I would suggest, what I personally would do, is I would create whatever it is, my peppers, my black beans, my salsa, eat that as my side, maybe a couple healthy crackers, and then my dessert would be a protein pudding. Now, it's not ideal, but for people that are plant-based and you're not trying to have soy, it's very difficult if you're trying to keep your carbs lower but your protein higher. And again, if your goal, which everyone that I work with, their goal is fat loss and muscle development, lean muscle mass, lean muscle sculpting. So if you want to have that aesthetic look, then you're going to need to be aware that you're not overloading your body with carbs and under delivering on the protein, okay? So again, when we're doing that, it's high glycemic. So, protein bar. This is a great new protein bar, small seed. I am not associated with a company, but I do love promoting great brands. So, total carbs, 20. Fiber, 7. So we have 13 remaining. 20 grams of protein. We're over with the protein, we're under with the carbs, we're golden, this is low glycemic. Healthy fat, 9 grams of healthy fat coming from almond butter and 1 gram of saturated fat. Boom. This is gluten-free, this is soy-free, this is all the frees that you need, dairy-free, all of it. I love it, love it, love it. So that is a great choice. When you do look at protein bars, make sure you are looking at looking for sucralose, aspartame, erythritol. Now again, erythritol is one of those things that's dicey because I used to be able to do well with erythritol, and recently my body is reacting in the same way that it does with sucralose. So again, I think it's one of those things like gluten. If you overconsume, your body does develop an allergy to it. So be aware of that too. That's why it's good to mix up what you're eating, because if you get obsessed with something, little by little, your body might become intolerant to it. So just keep that in mind. It happens to a lot of people. So it's very, very good. And you might notice too, when you go on vacation, sometimes that is the best thing for your stomach because you're forced to eat differently and your body needs that break from those foods that you're over consuming, even if they are healthy. Okay, so tortillas. This is such a big question that I get amongst so many people. Okay, so we're going to talk about everything tortillas right now. Now, Be Free, BFREE, is a brand that has tortillas. Are they the best tasting, the best texture? No, but from a low glycemic, gluten-free, vegan standpoint, the best you will find, okay? Now, if you can't find those, another great brand is Siete. Now, what I will say is that these are lower glycemic, but they're not as low as some of the others, and I'll explain why right now. So with these, 1 tortilla, 10 carbs, 1.5 grams of fiber, so we have about 8.5 grams of carbs and 3 grams of protein. So really, it's not that bad, it's lower, but our fat is at about 6 grams. So you get a lot of calories for a small little tortilla. It's quality, very few ingredients, it's gluten-free, it's paleo, it's non-GMO, dairy-free, soy-free, vegan, so it's a great option, but it's higher calorie than the Be Free, better texture, a little higher fat, so again, it's all a balancing act. But I keep a few in my fridge. Obviously, I have them with me right now. So I am all about mixing it up and knowing when I've had a lot of gluten, not a lot, but knowing when I've had gluten and when I haven't. And because I do love the texture and the taste and the fact that this is so low glycemic, I love these, but I also know that I'm going to be eating gluten, and that's why it's low glycemic, because there's a lot of gluten in it. That's the main source of protein within these wraps, is gluten. So another thing is there are a lot of ingredients. So it's not quality from an ingredient standpoint and having gluten standpoint, but when it comes to the fact that you can eat this entire thing and there's only 80 calories, and it's because there's so much fiber. So we have 24 carbs, 17 grams of fiber. So very, very, very few carbs remaining, 7 net carbs, and then you have 8 grams of protein right there. Completely low glycemic, to the point where they can even slap the word keto on this because it is that low glycemic. So 2 grams of fat, which again, doesn't really matter at that point, but these are super low glycemic, but they have gluten. So be aware, I personally would not consume more than 1 of these every 4 days. So 2 a week at most, and make sure that when you are having it, you do not have any other additional gluten any time around that. If you can have this be the only thing that you have that day with gluten, then I think you'll stay in a pretty good place, okay? But it's the people that just get so obsessed with everything having gluten, that's when the problems start, and everything starts getting a little bit bloated and gassy. Okay, so these other 2 that I found that I really do like the fact that they are grain-free. Same thing with this, and also the bee-free, grain-free. This is made with cassava flour. They're both made with cassava flour, actually. They're very similar. It's amazing with marketing these days. But okay, let's show you this. 20 grams of carbs, 2 grams of fiber, 18 carbs left, and 0 protein. So this is not low glycemic by any means, but the days that I know I've had gluten and I'm dying for this, I will make sure that I just have this with additional protein and fiber, okay? And a little bit of healthy fat. There's also 4.5 grams of fat in here, so that helps a little bit. But at the end of the day, there's no protein, there's nothing. So I wouldn't just have this as is with, vegetables. And that's the problem I have with veggie wraps, is that typically they're rolled in something that has 0 protein, and it just has vegetables and there's no protein. So it's, with vegetables even, there's carbs that come. So be aware when it comes to these. It's a balancing act, you guys. It's all about, okay, this doesn't have any protein. Where can I pull protein from somewhere else, add it to the overall meal, and lower the overall glycemic index of it? Okay, so again, to break it down, look at the nutrition label, look at the total carbs, subtract the fiber, and then you're gonna look at that. Let's say it's 20. Your protein is 10. You have 10 grams of a, gap there. That's considered acceptable in the low glycemic world, okay? Healthy fats aid in that as well. And of course, adding in additional protein and fibers from another source is going to be the most bang for your buck, okay? So I hope that was helpful. And again, the name of the game is all about preparation. So if you are not aware or you're not for sure about something, reach out to me, and please do not be a stranger. Questions are good. I'm here to help you navigate. So hopefully this will give you a further understanding of the glycemic index. You can also Google the glycemic index of every fruit and it'll rank everything. There's a lot of stuff on the web too. So I will talk to you soon.